Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of Iblis Manifestations podcast. On this week's episode, it is my absolute honor and privilege to have none other than Esther Segarra on the podcast. She is known mainly for her work as a photographer and working in a professional capacity with legendary bands such as Mayhem, Dark Throne, Abath, Rotting Christ, Watain, Behemoth, Ghost, Triumph of Death, Triptychon, Tribulation, Venom, Sweden's Shining, the list goes on. She is also the author of the oral and visual project Arsombra, which was released through Season of Mist, which featured a lot of her work as a photographer, and she is also the creator of the Cosmo Planner, which is basically a self-help calendar and planner, which is designed around cycles of the moon and astrology, which is something that I personally use and highly recommend you to check it out if you haven't done so already. On this episode, we talked a lot about her background and what actually made her do the move between Barcelona and London, and how she ended up actually pursuing her career as a photographer. And we also talked a lot about manifestations, as it is the topic of this podcast generally. And we also talked about the relationship between art and time and things of that nature. We also took a deep dive into astrology, which is something that I've been meaning to do ever since I actually started this podcast. And we also actually talked about an example of how President Ronald Reagan used astrology and cycles of the moon in order to arrange his communications with the press and what he was going to release to them. So, before we continue, as always, I just wanted to say thank you all for supporting the podcast, for giving us your time, for listening, for sharing your feedback, subscriptions, everything. I do very much appreciate all of that. And when you listen to this episode, I think that you will soon realize that this is definitely one for the books. And I gotta say, I am very proud of how this episode turned out. And Esther is without a doubt one badass lady, and it was absolutely my honor to have her on the podcast. So now, without further ado, please welcome Esther Segarra to Iblis Manifestations. Enjoy, people.
Right, Esther. Thank you so much for jumping on. I've been really looking forward to this. So, it's great to have you on the show, finally.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it as well. That's great.
How have you been? Have you been okay? Seems that you've been very busy with the Cosmo Planner stuff at the moment.
It's been, I've been busy. Yes, it's been, I'm always busy. I always have a lot of ideas and a lot of things that I want to do. So I tend to that would be great to do this and that, and you know. So I'm always finding myself involved with things, so which is good.
Absolutely. And actually, that's one of the things I admire the most about you, is that you're not just a photographer or anything. There's always all these ideas, and obviously they do intertwine in some ways, whether it's in the format of art or other things, but it's the fact that, you're always chasing something and these ideas. And I actually find that quite inspiring, to be honest with you. So obviously you have done quite a few interviews in the past, but I feel like this is we're going to dig deep on this one, so I just wanted to start this by going into your background a little bit, what actually got you started on this, and obviously the move that you made to the UK. How many years ago was it when you moved to the UK?
Oh, I don't know. It was at the turn of the century, so around 2000, just before 2000, I think. I remember celebrating, the end of the world at the year 2000 in London, in Greenwich. So but it was a little bit before, maybe a couple of 2 or 3 years before that. Yeah.
Sure. Well, what actually got you started on this? Obviously, being a photographer, I think that was kind of like the main thing that got you started, at least as far as I could see from here. So, what actually got you started, and then what made you actually want to make the move from Spain to the UK to basically follow and chase your dreams, so to say?
Well, it wasn't really a choice. It was one of those things that happen in life that you think like the worst thing that could have ever happened to you, and it turns out to be the best things could ever happen to you. So that basically, I mean, I did have the idea of wanting to be a photographer while I was in Spain, and Spain, or in Barcelona, where I'm from, and it's not the best country at the time. It wasn't the best country or the best place to study photography. But how I ended up in London was a bit by accident, because I had decided to go to London just for a summer, just to earn some money to pay for my photography in Spain, for my photography course. And as it happens, when I had all the money and, you know, I was kind of almost ready to leave, the house I was living in got broken into. So all the money that I had saved was stolen. Mm. So I was a bit like, okay, so now I am left completely empty-handed. You know, I've been working, you know, I had been working like 7 days a week for the whole summer just to have that money, and it was gone. And I mean, I remember I came back to the house, and like obviously someone had broken into. My camera was left on my bed, and my money was gone. So I took my camera and I left the house. Because the person who had broken into also had found the key of the last person who had moved out of the house. So basically, it wasn't a safe place for me to be, and so I left. Anyway, but so that particular thing that happened was the thing that made me consider whether I should go back to Barcelona or I should stay in London for a little bit longer, you know, and to sort of like, I thought, well, here I have a job, I can study part-time and work part-time. And that's something that in Barcelona was not really possible to do. Either you worked or you studied. And so I thought, well, you know, like, seems such a shame to leave London without having just at least tried to see a bit more of London and to get to study maybe photography in London. So I decided I will give it a try for a year. I thought, well, I'm going to stay here for a year. I'm going to study for a year. I'm going to work for a year, and we'll see what happens. And that turned out to be 20 years. So it just kind of went a bit like that, because once I did the first year, things started happening. And I mean, yeah, and I just stayed in London, basically. So that's how, it wasn't so much of like, I need to go to London to be a photographer. But as I was in London, I became a photographer. You know, I managed to become a photographer.
Yeah, and you did a fantastic job of it as well. You know, I mean,
thank you.
I remember, I mean, before I go off on a tangent, that situation, did you explain? I was not aware of this. I can only imagine, obviously, like you said, this worked out well for you down the line, but that must have been very stressful at the time. I can only
imagine. Was. Yeah, it was. I mean, and at the beginning, I mean, for anyone who sort of arrives in London, it wasn't easy, you know. I mean, London is a very expensive city and everything. So, I mean, having all your money stolen was not fun at all. And it took me a while to recover from that. But yeah, but I mean, but it turned out to be a good thing, because otherwise, I mean, I don't even want to think what would have happened if I would have come back to Barcelona, you know. But it was definitely a good thing. And also, I mean, sometimes, I can't remember who said that, but, you know, like, sometimes you need to, something really bad needs to happen to be able to carry on living. You know, it's like you really need to feel like you hit bottom to be able to carry on, you know, because in that place of nothingness, you know, is when the phoenix rises from the ashes. So so that's a bit like the experience that I felt, you know, with that happening. But I mean, the good thing is that I did have a job and I could study and work at the same time, which I did, you know, for a whole year. I was working 6 days a week and I was going to school 2 days a week. So it was one day that I was doing a double shift. I was like going to school and working school in the morning and working in the evening. So
sure. Well, I love that. That is what I live for. I think there is definitely patterns within life and the world. I mean, I'm fascinated by this, because like you said, it's when shit hits the fan that you have I like to see it as an opportunity. Like whenever something really goes sideways in life, and like you said, you hit rock bottom. I know this is always harder to do it at the time than to just have the philosophy, but I think it's important to always see these things as an opportunity rather than something else. And it's always very interesting and very rewarding what life then offers you in return when you stick to your guns and you sort of push past that threshold, if you will. And it's very interesting. It's all the butterfly effects, isn't it? I mean, just the fact that maybe I'm one of these people who looks too much into things, but just the fact that you said your camera was left there, but then the money was gone. That to me is already like, it couldn't get more symbolic than that, even though maybe on the surface it's such a negative event, but it's still very much symbolic, in my opinion.
Absolutely, it is, because I met someone who had a similar situation, but the opposite. They left their money, but they took their camera. So they never became a photographer.
Right. Interesting. Wow. Okay. Wow. It's one of them. I think life always, I feel like it offers us a chance. I think once you've been around for long enough, or you sort of observe things, there's a reason behind every event, doesn't matter how good or bad. I think that is almost like the good or bad becomes, sort of, I don't know, it becomes like a matter of perspective, really. And
absolutely.
I think that's why it matters to maintain a positive attitude and an opinion on things, and try to see what actually serves you.
Absolutely. I believe that the positive and negative comes more how you approach things rather than the things themselves, because as you said, it's like anything that happens, but it might be the end of something, but there's always the beginning of something else. So it's anything that happens always brings over other opportunities and other possibilities. But if you're focused only on that thing that has come to an end, you will never see the possibilities. You will never see what else it opens up. So definitely that's something that you require, that to see the possibilities and then to have the determination to keep walking, but I think that when you step back, and I think it's a struggle to accept things, it's like something has happened and you don't want to accept it, it's like, no, it shouldn't be like that, so the more you get stuck with what it shouldn't be, like that's when you close off possibilities, because when you accept something as it is, it doesn't matter how bad it is, and by bad I mean how much you don't want it to be like that, and by bad I mean that you don't want it to be like that. So the more you accept how much something it is as it is, it doesn't matter if you don't want it or not, then is when you start to really, like, as soon as you do that, it's like a release, and then you can start to see all the possibilities that can open up instead, And
absolutely, it's what they say, whenever one door closes, another one opens.
Exactly. But if you only keep looking at the one that's closed, you won't see the one that is opening.
Exactly that. Yes, absolutely. So obviously with your work as a photographer, what actually got you into, because obviously you're very much I would say a part of the black and death metal scene, especially, and just heavy metal in general. All of the good bands, you seem to have done some photography for them, at least good bands by my estimate anyway, and I'm sure many of the people listening to the podcast. But for example, you did the a lot of the very famous shots for Watain. You also did, I think, a lot of Triptychon's most like iconic shots, when Tonji Warrior kind of brought that whole thing into life. And also, I mean, a lot of bands, even Dissection Live, which is like, that's I'm jealous that you even got to see them in those times, let alone actually do photography and have those cool pieces around. Same with Motorhead. and all of these bands, including also the shots for Destroyer 666 on Wildfire with Keith holding the bow, which is that's like the manliest picture I think in existence ever. So I was just wondering, what actually got you into that, and how did that sort of then start to play out where you could actually pursue it as a form of career? Because as we all know, art forms in general aren't always the easiest thing to. It's a thing that is very much nourishing for the soul, but maybe not always for the bills and your bank account. So how did this all sort of work out for you in the end, where you could actually make a career out of it? And why did you choose this path, which is quite a niche of actually working hand in hand with the underground metal scene?
Well, the thing was, there was a love of music. I mean, when loving that extreme dark, extreme unhuman sound, and this really very sort of, I'll say use the word passionate, with a lot of passion, that fire, blood, all this is symbols of passion, symbols of really strong energies. So I'd say, the love for that, and the love for the music, and that's and when you do something with love, it shows, it flows, so that's one. I mean, and I feel that I didn't so much chose it, but it was chose. I mean, it chose me. I mean, it worked, because I mean, I could love it as much as I wanted, but if they all hated my pictures, you know what I mean? Well, that's that, you know what I mean? That's you don't have a choice with that. I mean, all you can do is the best you can, and then see what happens. I mean, the world will respond in one way or another, as they, as it goes. But so I feel that it was a bit it kind of happened that way, and I don't know. So that's kind of the path how it went, and I don't. There is this idea that art and money or business is incompatible, or either you do things for love or for money, kind of thing. And it's not that you do things for money or not for money. I mean, you do things for love, and then one way to show that exchange is through receiving a payment for it. I mean, I don't say it. It's a different, I mean, you can do many things for money, but also I don't think it's bad to receive something in return when you do something, that you create that is being used and stuff like that. And in fact, I'm going to drop in here something about astrology, but Venus is the planet of love and money, both, so, and worth has to do in both ways. Money is just, you can see it as an energy exchange. You can see it as a symbol of something, it's however you want to see it, that's very personal, but ultimately is an exchange, has always been used as an exchange. You do this for me, and either I do something in exchange for you, or I give you money so you can get that money and you can buy your groceries, and do you know what I mean? And you can do something with that money, because ultimately you exchange money for things, holidays, bills, rent, anything, So that's maybe my attitude has been that, that I need to be able to live on what I love. I've never believed in having a full-time job and then doing what I love as on the side. I can't, I believe in integrity, and I try to be an integral person that, sort of that my time is spent with things that I enjoy, and the way to do that is to get to get a way of making a living, with what I love, just because otherwise I'm going to have to do something maybe that I do not love doing, or something that, that distracts my energy, my time from, for something that I really want to do. So that's the thing. But I have to say that I have done other kind of photography apart from music photography, which I also enjoyed doing, which has been like working with like ceramic artists and sculptures. I've done a lot of that, and I've also, that's something that I kind of enjoy, because I do enjoy receiving someone's creation and then putting my own, filter, or, my own way of portraying it, and then returning it to them so that they can expand their creation, by using the pictures to promote their album or their work, or whatever it is, so that it becomes like a nice sort of like a cycle, and it's kind of quite beautiful, that, and I enjoy that. So, but I mean, yeah.
Absolutely, and I can certainly see the collaborative side of that with the bands that you have also worked with. I mean, I'm sure these are all people with very strong visions, but you then take that vision and, like you said, you add your own twist to it, so to say. And also, just pointing back on what you just mentioned there as well, in my estimate, I also don't think that money and art are exclusive to one another. Quite the contrary, actually. But I think you pointed on something very beautiful there, which is that should be a lesson to, I think, anyone who wants to approach any form of art, is that first and foremost, you do it for the love of it. You do it for the passion because it burns your fire. And then, of course, once that's kind of settled, then, of course, you should get paid for it. I mean, why not? It's like, it's a no-brainer. And like you said, I also view financial things as a form of exchange anyway. Like, I don't see anything like, I think a lot of people, and I can certainly see where they might be coming from, because I myself, certainly when I was maybe 18, 19 years old, maybe viewed monetary exchanges in the same way, where it's like, oh, that's a part of a system or whatever, but it's not, like it maybe is, but it's good. It's a very good thing to have, because then it's a reflection of the amount of work that you've done, and some of the other things. Obviously art is always a tricky one, because it could very much be priceless. It's very hard. It's a tough thing to put that on, but as an artist, whatever that you agree on, then that is what it's worth, right? So yeah. then the exchange is fair, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And I think that yes, and I mean, and I know, I understand what when you pointed out about this idea of the system, and when you have to take care of yourself, when you don't have someone who's going to pay your bills, when you are, especially when you're totally in a country where no one has your back, like money gives you freedom, full stop. Not having money turns you into a slave, because you have to, you depend, you know what I mean? Like it slaves you, it slaves you because you cannot do shit. You're depending on someone to give you something, you know what I mean? Is you cannot do things. So that's how I see it, that, like having money gives you freedom, basically, and it allows you to put that money into things that you think they're worth it, and also I think that it's a good way. It's nothing wrong with showing appreciation or value for something with money.
Yeah,
that's the that's the thing. But yes, but I mean, there is many different beliefs around money. So
absolutely, but I think the very good thing about that is, if you are someone like yourself, for example, who values their freedom, then this actually drives you to offer more services to the people, to actually offer something that is of value and work very hard for it. I mean, like, and this is what I mentioned earlier on about, obviously, you've got your book, Our Sombra, which was released through Season of Mist. And obviously, there's also the Cosmo Planner, which you've been working on for, I think, the last 2-3 years, maybe.
Since the pandemic, yeah.
Since the pandemic, yeah. And I think that's fantastic. And this is what I mean when I say that's inspiring for me to see, because to me, I don't see that and I think, oh, let me see how many different things I can do to earn money, but rather, what can I offer to the world that's the most valuable, that could then bring back the same thing. And I think when you start looking at it in this way and actually start thinking of it as like a key to freedom and independence, then that's when it becomes a very beautiful thing, I think, and then you enjoy the process. You enjoy working hard because, it's like farming almost. You plant a seed, then you have to give it some time, then you have to water it, make sure it gets the right amount of sun, and then it grows and blooms into something beautiful, which is life. And I think it's like the same thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, absolutely, it is very much so like that. And it is something that it is also risky because you don't know, like you create something, you don't know what's going to happen. You might put like a lot of time and effort into it, and nothing might happen.
Yeah.
It also, I mean, this is that's the other thing. But you don't do it for the outcome. You do it, as you said, for the process, because because it's something that you enjoy doing. And I mean, in Cosmo Planner, I created it for myself. I started with a piece of paper, like a ruler and some, a pen, and just created the thing. It's like, okay, and as it was value for me, and then I shared it to others, and it was value for them. It was like, well, then that's something that maybe it is valuable for more people.
Absolutely, yeah, of course. And obviously with your book, Our Sombra as well. I mean, that was I haven't got it here where I'm staying at the moment, but it's such a fascinating piece. Like I've seen very little photographers, maybe like designers and stuff like that. People do some things, but I've never seen any release like this. I think it's such a cool and unique idea, and especially that you had the music specifically arranged to go along with it as well. I think that's super creative. I mean, for anyone who's not checked out Our Sombra, I highly recommend you to check out this book. I mean, it's really a fantastic piece of like metal underground, I would say.
Yeah, it was a way to pay homage to that the whole scene, and to music, to the power of music, and through combining music and my work, that comes from music, is inspired, it's paying homage to what inspired my art, so the whole thing had to have a very cyclical nature, and that's why there is a soundtrack that is the pictures are inspired by music, but the soundtrack of the book is inspired by the pictures, so it creates Ouroboros kind of cycle.
Absolutely. One of the things that obviously stands out in that book, to me personally, and I'm sure to a lot of other people who've seen it, is the infamous picture between Eric Danielsson and Selim Lemouchi in Uppsala, Sweden, I believe in 2013, if I'm correct about the dates. Of the two of them, I think sharing a cigarette or something,
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, and that is a very, very special one. I mean, I can only imagine, what even goes through your mind at a moment like that, because moments, right, when you're experiencing life, a lot of times, you can be as present as you want in the moment, and that's a beautiful thing. But I feel it is only afterwards or later down the line where it's almost like a memory grows a life of its own, and it just becomes more powerful as time goes on. And I mean, obviously in the case of that particular picture, what happened within a year after that and everything, with the obviously Selim's passing, I think it's powerful. I mean, what even goes through your mind when you're in a moment like that? And obviously, you don't know what's going to unfold in the future, but just the fact that you were there and then you're just like taking a picture. What's sort of the thought process behind that? And then now reflecting back on it after this time.
Well, I'll say the thought process comes after, and at the moment there is no thought. It is an instinctual, sort of. Just like feeling that, like to take a picture, basically. And I mean, in that particular one, of course, I had no idea that was going to be the last time I would see Celine in my life. And of course, that the picture would become such a symbol or such a strong image, considering, I mean, what everything they convey. I mean, you don't know. I mean, you take people so you take pictures of people while they are alive, you know. But I mean, I remember that day it was we had been doing some pictures, some interviews, and we just went to the Canons, which is a place where the Watain and the Uppsala people tend to hang out a lot, and where I took the very first pictures of Watain as well. The very first time I worked with them, we did some pictures by the Canons pointing to the church, and it was kind of like towards the end of the day. And it was a very much like just some friends hanging out kind of mood. And in those situations, many times I kind of like, I need to switch off from like being, you know, a professional photographer into like, you know, like just sensing the situation. But it felt, you know, it was kind of okay and to take pictures. And I just literally took a couple of pictures, you know, 2-3 pictures, not more than that.
Wow. Okay.
But one of them, there was this, aesthetically it was beautiful, you know, it was a moment that you really wanted to capture, you know, because it was like the silhouette and the, you know, the light going down, and, you know, so they had that magic, visual magic. And and I just took a few pictures, and that was that. And then it unfolded the way it did. I mean, that's something that I would not really, but it's more like, you know, it was just many times I just see things and I'm like, oh my God, I have to capture this, you know, I have to, because every moment is so ephemeral, you know, it disappears so quickly, you know, every moment is different, you know, it's a tiny little bit different. And with photography, that really shows you that, because if you a picture taken 1 second after another, they are different. Yeah. You know, there is, you know, and that shows that, you know, there is always a moment, a change. And especially when it comes to people, like people don't hold their faces or their expressions for more than, you know, like a half of a second, you know, there is always this kind of ongoing, like changing nature that you try to, and if there is something that makes you feel like you want to capture, you know, you want to capture it because you want to almost freeze it, you know, you want to stop for it, you know, it's both, you take a picture and you stop it changing in some ways, you know, I mean, it changes, but you've captured the picture, you know, you have a static still image of a moment that many times you don't even see that moment, you know. Absolutely. Because it's when you take the picture that sometimes you actually get to see the moment. And that happens a lot in live photography. If you see the picture, you've missed the picture. So when you take the picture, it's almost, you have to feel it, the moment, and then like, you know, and then you capture it.
No, absolutely. You know, this definitely set up something in my head now, because now if you really think about it, a big part of art in its different formats is capturing time, in a sense. Obviously, photography is very specific in that, but life is constant movement. I mean, like you said, even if you take, like, I don't know how many pictures, like if you take 60 pictures within 1 minute, they're all going to be different. And obviously, having done band photography and things like that, I'm familiar with this. You know, like you look through the pictures and there's never one that's exactly the same. I 100% get behind that. But I feel like there's a deeper sense to this, that with art, we're constantly, it's almost like a part of us, intentionally or not, you're always grasping onto time somehow, you know. Someone a few years ago, I was speaking to this gentleman he's not even a metalhead or anything, but he said this really interesting quote, and it was that music is a way of decorating time, which I thought was that's fucking great, right? And if you think about it, it's exactly like that. Life is constant movement. Even myself and you and myself talking right now, every second that's going by, it's like you can't repeat that anymore. Every event that's happening around the world and in the cosmos, it's once that's happened, then we're moving forward only. And I think that's really the beauty of art, is that is obviously part of it is just being present in the moment and doing things, but then the fact that we have the capability of capturing moments, whether it's that you sit at home, record a riff, and then that riff is then there forever, or when you even release an album a specific year, that is like when someone, for example, if you listen to like the very first Black Sabbath album, you know, that is a piece of time. I don't think they had any idea what the fuck that was going to create around the world and the changes that was going to make. That, I think they were just doing their thing. But then you look at it, you know, and then you listen to it, and then that's just like a perfect moment captured in time. And yeah, I think it's there seems to be a very interesting relationship between time and art, if you think about it. You know, whether it's like
no, it is a very it's a very interesting thought, because it is. I mean, as you said, you try to capture something. You know, there is something that, you know, time. Yeah, I mean, or there's some, because it has. I mean, but the time that it takes to create something, you know, it's like it's the energy that you are going through that time, that it is being manifested into something, you know, is being transferred into something, that it is a manifestation, you know. It's not a thought, or it's not, you know, because art is not a thought. I mean, art is something that you can experience with the senses, you know. It is something that it is, you know, like anchored in reality. So, and it is the culmination of everything that you've put, you know, like to make that happen somehow. So, you know, it is, you could, yeah, I mean, it's a capture, but it is also a channeling, isn't it? It's a channeling that happens over a period of time. And that's, you know, so it is a mixture between channeling and capturing time, right? I mean, there is something that, and you could say that maybe, I mean, I should put a very good example with Black Sabbath, that maybe they were tapping into some collective energy of the time, and that's what they channeled. And by creating that album, they capture that collective energy of the time somehow.
Absolutely, and exposed the rest of the world to it as well, which is, I think, one of the most beautiful powers of rock and roll in general. And this happens with everything, you know. It's not necessarily subgenre specific, but there are certain bands that, whether they were aware of this or not, like you said, they tapped into something. I very much feel this way, and I feel very strongly this way also about Cliff Burton from Metallica. I feel like that guy, I mean, I feel like he brought something special into this world that wasn't from here, I feel. And I feel like I sadly, I feel like a part of me at least feel like maybe he even paid the price for it, but I feel like what he brought into this world was extremely special, and the vessel of the band which he did it through, and his own sound and style and everything, there was definitely something going on there, which was, I think, more than just playing music and entertaining. It was a lot deeper than that, you know. I think and it grows. You always see these with artists, and I think maybe not even just artists that are necessarily musicians or like painters or photographers as such, but even like certain people. I feel like when you tap into that thing and then you start growing and growing and growing and growing, it's almost a thing that it threatens the fabric of the order of the world in a sense. And then you somehow, you know, there somehow seems to be consequences for that. But at the same time, what you're then doing is that your legacy and what you leave behind from what you've brought in from the other side, let's say, then that touches a lot of other people, and then it then has like a domino effect somehow.
Absolutely. Yes, I think yes, I mean, I completely agree with the example of Cliff Burton that you used. And yeah, and there is that that other. It is an interesting thought of like, once you do that, what actually happens, and how it becomes like, something. Yeah, either you pay a price, or I don't know. There is something that it. Well, I also think that there is always two sides to a coin. You could also look at it like that there's always two sides to a coin, and that many times people only want to see one side of the coin without actually seeing the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
And
sure. It's a very complicated thing. This is one of them things. It's hard that, like, just the fact that we're even using words to discuss it is like, that's already a very, very abstract idea, I think.
Yes.
But it's great, and I think that's really the beauty of what we do, and those moments, and obviously even capturing a moment like that, which we talked about with Selim and Eric and these things, I think is absolutely fascinating. There definitely is something very special to, I think, what we all partake in, whether as creators or even consumers, because I think even as someone who just consumes art, you're still creating your own reality of it, because everyone also perceives art differently than everyone else.
Absolutely. But that's the thing, is whatever is being created or manifested is not like a static thing, because every person's experience of it adds to it.
Mm-hmm.
It adds to it. It shapes it. It gives it like a, it adds to that energy, everyone's expression, everyone's idea, everyone's value.
Absolutely. That's, I think, one of the very interesting things about it. I mean, this, we can very much get into the subject of religion and things like that. But once you have a certain focal point, which you then sort of feed your energies into, whether it's your brain waves or whatever, I'm sure there's a scientific explanations for it, but whatever we focus on, and then especially if you have multiple people focusing on the same spot, that becomes real. It becomes very powerful. And I think actually this is kind of weird, but I think one of the things that feeds into it is pain and sacrifice. So when you try to, for example, in like religious practices, like the practice of self-flagellation, where you like beat yourself up and cause yourself harm, but then you do this in the purpose of focusing on something greater. You are actually feeding that thing greater somehow. Now, it might not be something that's got arms and legs, but it still very much has a presence and power when you do this. And that's why sometimes when you listen to especially a lot of rock bands songs from like the 60s or 70s, it's almost like, even if it's the first time you're hearing that, it almost feels like you've heard it before. And I feel like that's because there's somehow a collective brain out there, like a web somewhere of everyone else who's ever listened to the song and all the other experiences that they've had to it, and you actually then somehow tap into that by listening to it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And I was thinking, like, I mean, the experience of going to a live show.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you go to a live show where you can listen to the music at home? You have it at home. Why would you join so many people to share that experience? It's not, you can never reach that energy that you create in power, like in circle, in many people, in gathering, that you cannot do by yourself, and that's that. And it and again, as a musician, when you are on stage and you can sense that energy of the crowd, it fits you as much as you fit the energy, so, and you cannot say that it's not real. You know what I mean? Like,
it's the realest thing you'll ever experience.
Exactly. And it is not, it is like that, because energy, we cannot see it, but we can certainly sense it. It's something that we can no one can, deny, like they never, oh no, I never sense any energy. Well, then maybe you're dead and you don't know.
Your pineal gland is too calcified to sense anything.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, no, but I mean, 100%. It's one of them things, it's like there's like a extra temperature in the room that you can feel, which you can't put your finger on it. You can't tell why that's there. I think it surpasses just the movement and all the, there's something much bigger. I mean, to me, rock and roll is a very religious experience, for sure. That taps into a part of us that is so much beyond our own comprehension. I mean, obviously, for example, you mentioned, why do you go to a live show when you could just do it at home? To me, it's like, why would someone travel all the way to Mecca in the middle of like shithole Saudi Arabia to go around circles around the Kaaba house when they could just sit at home and pray? You know what I mean? There is something to that, of when you've got a group of people and everyone is moving together. It's about the moving together and unifying on something, which is there's a powerful thing there with us. I mean, it's the same as you even look at like legions and armies in ancient times and how they would move together and marching together. There is something to that when we all as humans get on the same page and there's unity between us, we have the power to do anything.
Absolutely, and absolutely, that I completely agree. And this is something that the powers be have always tried to stop.
Yeah.
They know that. They so know that, and because it's true. I mean, it's like, and it's a shame that we don't tap into that power and to that, collective power, because it really is powerful. I mean, but you can see, I mean, festivals are a clear example of, what happens when you put, people's work together for one same, like goal, or, I mean, the amount of work that it takes to put a festival together. I mean, before, during, and after, and when everything comes together, everyone is under the same. I mean, wonderful things happen. And everyone is important. I mean, without the fans, the festival will not happen. Without the musicians, it will not happen. Without the people working behind the scenes, will not happen. Everyone has their place. But, like when the energies come together, amazing things, like to the level of almost like a spiritual, like religious. I prefer to think of it as a spiritual, as in it taps into like a spiritual energy or something that is not, that it is felt more than, like studied or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it's not sort of directed by one person who decides what's right and what's wrong,
Of
as
course.
a religion, as a religion thing would say. But yeah, it is a religious experience in that sense. And people will travel across the world to go to a festival or to see a show or something, the same as they will go to Mecca. Absolutely. There is something really,
it's the amount of butterfly effects it takes just for that one moment to happen. I mean, maybe this is like I overthink this like crazy to come to these conclusions, but they're real. Because if you think about it, like you mentioned the example of a festival, the way I look at it is you've got people who, well, I mean, you can really take it deep and just say the fact that, okay, this might be a bit of a graphic example, but let's say, for example, you've got 10,000 people in front of you and you're on main stage at this open air festival. Every single one of those 10,000 people, they were the semen that had to reach the egg first. And then for them to have then grown and then to be fed their entire life, to grow up, go through hardships, good experiences, memories, everything. But to then through somehow actually end up getting into this kind of music, to then keep developing that further, to then all coincidentally happen to be exactly in the same place where they've had nothing to do with each other prior to this, and then now everyone's on the same page. That is, to me, that's magic. It's just like what the fuck? You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you've tapped into, I feel, something that, it's very common to think like, oh, I'm not good enough, or to give yourself excuses to not do things, or, or whatever negative self-talk, you might give yourself to. And to me, like, you've just summarized, like a proof that, this is all nonsense, all this way of thinking, because the chances, of you being born, the whole journey. I mean, what the hell are you here? You know what I mean? Like, how can you think that you're here by mistake, or there is a mistake that you are here, or that your life is, not anything else than you want? I mean, you can have, I mean, you can, the probabilities and the whole magic of things coming together, as you just described, is just the most amazing thing, and it is something that should be like, work hard to really welcome, to really embrace, and to really make the most out of it, and to do it from a place of power. It's your life, it's your path and your journey, and to really, give it all, give it all you have, just not just to give it all when you go to a festival, because you're watching your favorite band, but to give it all every single day of your life, to give it all for what it is that is important to you, like, kind of,
Absolutely.
like, not just for a band, but also for your own wishes, desires, dreams, relationships, friends, whatever, family, whatever is important to you, you choose, you go for it,
100%. Yes. You mentioned the negative mindset that a lot of people have. And I feel, and I might be wrong in this, but because it's one of them things that probably feeds into itself. But you mentioned something earlier about the divide that is constantly, purposely put in place by the powers that be. And I feel that this cynical way of thinking that, everything is pointless. I hate my life. I don't want to be here, kind of thing. I feel that also is something that might very well be instilled in us by the powers that be, whether directly or indirectly. But I feel it's there on purpose somehow. Whether it's through the abundance of resources and things that we have, because it's sort of like, if you've already got everything that you want, but you don't really think about where it comes from, or if you have no gratitude, and there's a lack of gratitude for sure that is really fucking with us, I think. But there's definitely something there about that, which I think disables us from realizing the potential of just the fact that you can even breathe air. That's a gift,
Yes, I completely, definitely, I think that the powers be, I mean, through, like, the way that's how they sell you things, right? To make you feel, no, you don't know, you have to go, you have to get this, or you have to buy that, because this they know better than you do, that's definitely the powers be. But also, I think that it could be simply the upbringing, that you have been brought up with, like, just basically negative statements about yourself, being told, as a kid, being told off, like, because you were in a certain way, you were, that part of you where it was somehow cut off, because was not accepted. But I also think that our brain always strives for more, the way, I mean, nature is growth, we are always want more, as part of our nature, not in a greedy way, because but in a growth kind of way. I mean, nature is constantly growing, but it is also constantly letting go. So it's, nature is not like constantly growing out of, when things grow too much, there is a rebalancing, like, I mean, the trees, they grow leaves and branches, and then they lose them, and then they grow them again, but I think there's also in our nature to want more, which means that if you don't balance that with some gratitude for what you have, you might end up pretty damn miserable.
Yeah,
like thinking,
for sure.
Oh, I don't have this, I don't have that. No, but you have all this. Yeah, but I don't have that. Okay. So then that's a thing that has to be balanced with, with some, as you said, gratitude, or something that it's not just thinking about what you don't have, or thinking about what you haven't done, or thinking about what you have not achieved. Like it's always like looking up the ladder, but sometimes it's good also to look at behind and look at how much you can up.
Absolutely, yeah. 100%. I think, yeah, there's definitely, it's even a proven scientific thing that gratitude has immense positive impact on our minds and our brains, if you even wanted to look at it from that angle as well, and like you say, yeah, we as humans have this thing of always looking at what we don't have. But I think this is where, and like you said, like I'm one of those people that spirituality is very big to me. I don't particularly follow organized religion, but one common thing within them, if I am to look at the bright side, that I do appreciate is the practice of gratitude. Is obviously, on one hand, I think that the way organized religion approaches it is to completely stop you from growing sometimes. Yeah, I think, at least that's my impression of it. It's like, okay, I've got everything. I'm just going to sit exactly where I am now and do fuck all. But I think it is good to sort of find a balance between those two worlds in order to fully grow and develop as a person. Is that, there's always the saying as well, the grass is greener where you water it.
Yes.
Right? So it's not always greener on the other side, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
exactly, absolutely. Because I think that one of the biggest growths that you can do is within you. Is actually to really fully discover yourself. To like know thyself. As it goes, to really, there's one journey that is guaranteed to never end.
Absolutely. Yeah 100%. And it's okay to, I think, embrace change as well. I myself have changed so much, just compared to, okay, so for anyone listening right now, us in Trivex, in my band Trivex, and Esther may or may not have actually worked on a project at some point previously, but hush hush for now. It might be coming out later this year. But so when we were doing that, the version of myself that I think you met a few years ago is completely different to what it is now, and probably vice versa as well with yourself. And I think that's a testament of just always wanting to grow and always wanting to get better and owning your own things. And that doesn't mean to be indecisive about who you are, but rather find the faults, work on them, and then try to move past it, and actually, because
absolutely,
it becomes more clear, like what actually is a fault and what isn't. Like if you open your heart, like your life will show you what is the good and bad. Actually becomes kind of clearer than I always used to think. I always used to think it was down to perspective in terms of what serves you or not. But when you really open yourself to what's your purpose and you try to do your soul searching, it becomes clear sooner or later what serves you and what doesn't, I think. And this is what allows for growth.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And and there is a simplicity about life. Mm-hmm. There is, I feel like there is something we tend to sometimes sort of like to overlook at things, but there is certain, like, there is something, I don't know, like, can't really put the finger on it, but it is simpler than many times we make it out to be. Mm-hmm. And we are also more complex than we make it out to be. That we are, I feel like many times we have many sides to us. It's like we are diamonds that they have many facets, and some of them we have seen, some of them we have not seen yet. And by just keep moving, new sides, they show up, they appear, and that's the beauty of it, that it is that but I believe that the simplicity comes in the process, not on the actual outcome. But there is the process is not that complicated. Yeah. And once you master the process, you can just keep going.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's like the universe, if you look at it, we've got very, I mean, the Matrix or whatever, we have very black and white laws and regulations for this world. So it's very, so in that sense, I agree. It's actually very simple once you realize how it works and energy, cause and effect. Like, for example, I'll show it, I'll do a physical demonstration here. This is the pen, which I was writing some questions for you earlier. If I let go of this, it will drop. There is no gray areas for that. And that is our universe. That is how life works. It's a very simple process that once you understand it, you can shape your life in whatever way that you want to. And sometimes it requires a little bit of sort of just trusting in yourself, because you don't necessarily know the outcome wholeheartedly, but just having faith and then knowing that, okay, this is, as long as it feels true to your purpose and to who you are, that this will work out how you want it to eventually.
Absolutely. I think you've said, like, if you, it's the traits, like the certain traits that they will require, like faith, trust, courage, resilience, compassion, love, it's all traits that, we all can tap into it. We can all have access to, and those are the ones that allows you to keep that process going. Definitely.
Absolutely. And onto that subject of actually being able to obviously understanding the universe and these things, I want to get into the astrology side of things with yourself, which is something that's very fascinating to me. I mean, first of all, for anyone listening, whether you're aware of it or not, Esther does this sort of yearly calendar called Cosmo Planner, which basically allows you to plan your year or months ahead based on basically the position of planets and everything, and based on astrology and how you can harvest the most result using that in time, which to me is it's a very interesting form of science. It's something I do think it is a form of science. I think that all of these things, spirituality, astrology, and then the robot science stuff, to me, it all is hand in hand in my world. But it is something that I'm very fascinated with. Like, for example, a lot of people, when you mention astrology, there's always a certain degree of hesitation, of like, oh, here we go. Is this like a crystal thing or whatever, which is like, I can actually understand that side of it too. And for me personally, just to be clear, it's something that I'm extremely fascinated by, because I've never read anything that's been wrong. And it almost like, it kind of freaks me out. It's like, well, why is this like, I'm trying to find faults here, but I just can't do it, and because I am one of those people. I doubt everything. I'm like, oh, what's this? What are you trying to sell me here? But it's very interesting. And obviously, I don't approach it. Sorry, I'm going on for way too long here, but I'm just explaining my own viewpoints on this whole thing. To me, I don't look at astrology and use it as because like a lot of people, for example, it's like, if I meet someone who's a Gemini, then I'll be like, oh, this person's an asshole, I don't want to get to know them or whatever. I never look at anyone like that. I'm interested in most people, all people. In fact, I think everyone has something to offer, which is probably very rare to come from a black metal musician. But I think one of the things about it is almost anything I've ever read about it, whether it's about myself or if I've looked into certain things, or even the Cosmo Planner. I mean, we did a live stream back in January 2021 last year, and I actually based that around your planner, and it went incredibly successful. Like, it was the best thing we ever did throughout the lockdown. So it's very fascinating to me. So I just want to hear more of, first of all, what's your viewpoint on this? What got you interested? And yeah, just tell me a little bit more about, just share your knowledge on astrology and what makes it so important.
Yes, I mean, I probably thought the same as you when it came to astrology. But I'd say that the horoscopes or what you read on the newspaper is not astrology. Astrology, it is a science. I mean, in the sense that it is based on the movement of the planets and on what the planets are doing. So when you proper astrology is the study of what the planets are doing up in the sky and how they move and how they interact with each other from the Earth perspective. So it comes from an Earth perspective. And it is incredibly accurate as it is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
It really is something that it is way more than what people think. And when you say a Gemini or whatever, the sign that that you are, this is only what the sun was at the time of your birth, but after that you have like 9 other planets, you have 9, and they all interact with each other. And you have what is known as the natal chart, which is like a snapshot of the sky at the moment of your birth. And that chart gives so much information about from what is your purpose in this lifetime, what is your soul come here to learn, what is like your yang identity versus your yin identity, what is your style of communication, what do you need to feel safe, how do you, whether are you going to have like delays in, career, or where you might have issues, where you might be more likely to expand, where do you search for freedom, like gives you so much information. And that's just your natal chart. And then you have transits. And most people ended up being drawn into astrology, like myself, when you have a big life transit, like I did. There is a particular planet that, it is just, it's like once you discover that and you start looking, it's like,
yeah.
So when that happened, that happened. When that happened, that happened. When that happened, that happened. And you start putting it together, and it's just uncanny. I have been going through a massive life transits with Mr. Pluto. I am now at the end of it. Next year will be at the end of it. And Pluto is you have the names, but they relate to archetypes. So Pluto is the god of the underworld, and is the great transformer. Exactly. So they all have like relation to archetypes, myths, it's the same archetypes, the same energies. So that, and actually astrology, what it does, it puts together the movements of the planets with those energies, so that where the planets are, are moving, how they're moving in the sky, how it's affecting you, because, you can relate it to your own birth chart. So, for example, Pluto is as being the god of the underworld, is the one who takes out, to the light, all the dirt, all the stuff that is in the shadows, all the stuff that you don't want to see. It just brings it out so you can actually deal with it, because the role of Pluto is to empower you, is to give you the power. But in order for you to have the power, you need to be able to see everything. If you have too many skeletons in your closet and you don't see them, you know what I mean? Like you'll be like kind of just limping around, and trying to move on. So Pluto is yeah. It just happens, so that's the thing with astrology, that once you understand that, you can harness that, because when things are going to happen, so you can make decisions based around those energies, and the most obvious case is the seasons of the year. This is the solar cycle. You have spring, summer, winter, autumn, and winter. So these 4 seasons, they happen with all the cycles. The moon cycle has also 4 seasons that they happen in 1 month instead of in a year. So just like in the winter, people are more down than in the summer. In the summer, people are more like, yeah, let's do things. Let's, you feel more energized. So that summer energy, it happens during the moon cycle around the full moon. People are more willing, more energized. Even yourself are more creative, are more outgoing. So things flow, it's like things flow better because the energy is right, But if you try to, for example, like, run marathons and, just go swimming in the winter. I mean, who the hell will do that, right? No one, right? I mean, or who will go to, like, oh yeah, I'm just, I'm going to go to the beach, like in the middle of, the beaches of Sweden, and get suntan. Who would do that? No one, right? Because it's like, hello, this is the wrong season.
Same as like harvesting fruits and just any kinds of food and anything like that.
Exactly. I mean, the thing is that we as humans, we become these arrogant beings that we think that we are above the cycles of nature, that we are the only beings on earth, that we are not affected by the stars, that somehow we are out of all this, like, the cycle of nature, like as if we are above it. We aren't. We function, we are affected by all the energy, by the seasons and the cycles of, just like a tree, just like the animals, we are beings on earth, and earth is a being, like the waves, the tides are affected by the moon, no, but no, we are humans. Oh no, we are above that. Hello, that's been the human arrogance. I mean, we've been able, there was a time where we're completely at the mercy of nature. When there was winter, we will die. Like now we have houses and we have heatings. That's really nice, and I'm not against it, but and we've isolated ourselves from nature so that we don't have to die, or we don't have to be at the mercy of nature. But between being at the mercy of nature and thinking that we are above how nature works, that's our suffering. This is ultimately our suffering, because we are disconnected from our nature. I mean, our bodies, is nothing by nature but nature. I mean, and by nature, I mean everything that is on earth, every single being that is on earth. So by us disconnecting ourselves completely from that, we are suffering. We are having, we have central heating, we have, all these great lives, yet we are dying inside. Mental health problems are, like worse than ever. We are dying inside, but hey, but I can have heating and I have light and I have electricity, which is great, but we have to reconnect, our inside, with our, with nature. And to me, and as we are humans with consciousness, we are not just animals that we have to forage for food, and we, but we are a bridge between the above and the below. We have that consciousness, we have that capacity to tap into the above. We then connecting to what the planets are doing, and doing things in alignment with those with planets. That's when we really start like flowing, and rather than riding life, and going, you sort of banging your head against the wall, you start riding, like with a wave. You start, of course you can swim against the current and you will get there, but you will have to waste a lot of energy to do that. But if you knew how the current works, then you can, and you are a bit patient, and but then things can happen with a lot less effort and with much more better results. And it is just as simple as that. And while there is many planets, it's not a question of trying to follow them all, because it can go a bit crazy. But there is, and that's the two planets I base Cosmo Planner. There is two main, when it comes to like planning and doing things, there is two main energies or two main planets that I think is important to tap into. One is the moon, because it regulates your emotions and your emotional state, and your emotional flow, ebbs and flows in tune with the moon. And the other one is Mercury, because it's your mind, it's your thinking.
And communication, right?
And it's communication, but it is also how, your mindset and how your mind works and how you see the world and how you learn. And these are two things that for most works is, you need to feel like doing something, but also you need to, have the mental, clarity to do it, so that's the that's to me is the thing with astrology. You can call it, it's known as astrology because astrology is the framework that describes all this and gives names to all the planets and stuff like that. But I mean, they're all related to myths, archetypes, from Young to, the Greek and the Roman myths. So, Mercury is associated with Hermes, the Greek god, the messenger of the gods. And also Mercury, the name is for Mercurius, which was the Roman equivalent. So you see all these archetypes and all these energies like explained from many different, perspective. And it is the same. And it's not just something, it's a nice story, which it might be, but they are energies that we can tap into. And it's almost, I think of it a bit like a radio station, where there is many different programs telling you the news, and you're deciding, now I'm going to turn them off. You know what I mean? Like, by turning them on, it will tell you, you all want, I try to not watch the news a lot, but I like to keep up with the news, because I like to keep up with things happening, because it's kind of useful, because otherwise you find yourself like, oh shit, why is everyone wearing a mask now? If you don't know what's going on. But I mean, it is for me, has proved a very useful information, and it is not only the information but also the process, because ultimately the natural process is a creative process, and by creative process I mean that there is a certain phases, of the journey where you prepare, you research, you get the ideas, you get the answers, you start making it happen, and then you put the details, and eventually you let it go, you release it. So there is, that seasonal cycle is actually a creative cycle.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you mentioned, obviously you mentioned that it's out of arrogance that we think we're above nature. I dare say it's more so ignorance, and purely just being out of touch with things. You know what I mean? Because it's like everything in life is, as we've come to realize, it works in cycles. I mean, even time itself. I always say that it's better to try and understand it from a perspective that it is circular rather than linear, because that's how everything in our universe works. It's constant, like, cycles. Everything is moving in circles, and things like that. I mean, even speaking of the cycles within our own nature, obviously, besides like the tides and the harvest of fruits, even within the human nature, for example, I mean, for women, there's the monthly thing, and that's that in itself, that's I know some people might think of it and be like, oh, that's this or that, whatever, but that's a very important part of our existence as a whole. And obviously the fact that I think, what is it, like 4 months out of the year where you are actually a woman is fertile to actually be able to conceive a child and everything like that. And we've got no idea about any of these things. And like you said, we're completely out of touch with nature, and we are dying on the inside. And I think that is an extremely important point, especially now where we exist inside the echo chamber of our phones and iPads and TikTok, which obviously you and I are using to communicate with each other. And this is how this will be released. But it is using this as a medium rather than falling into the trap of it and letting it control you. And absolutely. Yeah. And I think that with astrology, it's a very interesting way of trying to find that out. One of the things that you had, because I got the print, obviously, of the Cosmo Planner. And one of the very interesting things that I discovered when I was reading just the beginning part of it, and this is to anyone who obviously wants to understand, get a better understanding of the practicalities of how astrology is even used, is that you mentioned something that I believe it was the US government back in the, I don't know, was it the 50s or 60s, something like that, that they would actually use I think, was it the cycles of the moon to actually use that to give either good news or bad news to the people.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. There is, yes. Well, there is a saying that I can't remember who said that, but someone said, like, it's not millionaires who believe in astrology, it's billionaires who believe in astrology.
Right.
So I can't remember who said it, but I read that somewhere. But yes, so basically, there is a particular situation with the moon, which is known as void of course, which is the moon changes sign every 2.5 days. So, and as it travels around, very fast, it creates this connections or aspects, as is known as aspects with planets. So when it makes the last aspect of on that of the journey into that sign, and before it changes into the next sign, it goes into a period which is known as void of course, which in Hellenistic astrology was known as running into the void. And it is a time where it's said that nothing will happen, and nothing good will happen, but nothing bad will happen. There is some astrologers that they submit their tax return during that period of time, and I have experienced myself and friends, other people as well, that when you make decisions during that period, they are never right. So if you are to buy a present for someone, it will not work. But also people forget things, like conversations or things like that. So it was Ronald Reagan who used it, basically.
That's right.
Who basically, when he had done something that he didn't want the media to go too much about it, he will call a press conference during a void of course moon. So all the journalists will go there, they will ask questions. Next day, they will have was forgotten. It will not show up in the papers. But when he wanted things to really be like, people go like, yeah, well done, he will call press conferences when it was not during that period, when it was not during the void, of course. So of course the journalists will report on that and will remember that. So when it was about him kind of coming out as the hero. So I mean, it is very much like that. And as you said, as you rightly so mentioned about menstrual cycles, they totally follow the moon cycles. I mean, it's the same timing, and even, I mean, it is even like our circadian rhythms follow the seasons of the year. And I mean, it is all so interconnected. It's just that, I mean, when I meant like arrogance, I didn't mean it as individual arrogance. I didn't mean that we as individuals, we are arrogant. Sure. Yeah. We are ignorant, absolutely. But I meant as in, as the system,
as the collective.
As a collective, to think that we don't really, we are above, or that we can disconnect. And as you said, we have tools that they are machines, like computers and screens, that they work in a very linear way, but they are not organic. They're not natural. They are machines. But we are not machines, and we should not try to work like machines. We should honor our flows, ebb and flows, because they're not a bad thing. The thing is, what I've discovered actually with this new way of working is that it's not about being less effective. It's actually being more effective. We have this idea that as humans, if we work like machines, we will be super effective, because machines, when work like machines, they are super effective. But we are better than machines. We have a part, and now with all this artificial intelligence, we're going to have to tap into that part of us that is better than machines. And we are better, and by better means that we have certain capacities that machines do not have. We have a capacity to create, and we have a capacity to tap into energies that the machines do not have. And by doing that, we become not only more effective, and by effective, I don't mean, that we do a lot, but effective, I mean, is that you take care of your well, that your well-being is good, at the same time as you do and produce things, both. No, it's not just like, oh yeah, like I've achieved a lot, I've worked a lot, but I am burnout, or like, no man, I have a really cool life, I don't do shit, but I am happy. I mean, but you can actually combine both, and in a way that you feel great and you still make things happen that you want them to happen, and by that that's what I mean by efficient, not efficient in a machine efficient, but efficient as in that it is more of a holistic existence, where you can be and do equally,
I understand completely what you are saying. So as far as the astrology thing is concerned, how would you say that, if you could give maybe a little bit of a back understanding to someone who's actually listening, as to, so we know that we can plan and predict things, but how can we do this? What is it exactly based on? Especially to like the average skeptic that's out there, or anyone who's just maybe curious to know exactly like what is in details the way that we get to understand this type of science.
I would say the easiest way is to follow the moon. That's the one that it you can tap into, and that you will feel it. Like if you start looking at the cycle of the moon and look at how you are feeling based on the cycle of the moon, you will gain so much awareness about yourself. You will see how, oh, hold on a second, I'm feeling that way and it is full moon. Oh, I can't sleep. Oh, it's full moon. Oh, surprise. I work very, very hard around full moon, for example, and then, oh, I'm feeling down and depressed and I feel like life is pointless. Oh, we're coming to the end of the moon cycle. Oh, well, don't worry. It's not you. It's just leave it, like it will pass, and when new cycle starts, you will see. So I think the moon is probably the one that you can more experience, and you can really understand what it means to tap into or align or have an understanding about, like the most basic astrology of, following the moon. So that's to me one thing that you can easily and first do. If you want to follow any astrologer, you will see when they talk about things how they relate. I mean, there is a great book called Cosmos and Psyche.
What's the book again called? Sorry,
Cosmos and Psyche.
Cosmos and Psyche, right?
Yeah, which it talks about, how history and astrology they relate. There was a great documentary which was called the Changing of the Gods as well, which talks about the Uranus and Pluto cycle that has to do with revolutions, the big revolutionary movements in history. They coincide with the different parts of the Uranus and Pluto cycle. For example, Pluto being the one who digs out all the dirt, and Uranus being the planet of freedom and revolution. So when they both kind of keep meeting or connecting in the sky, things happen. And I mean,
we have one on the way.
Well, yes, we are. With this all Black Lives Matters and all this Me Too movement, it is happening. Yes, we are in the middle of it, and the US is also in the middle of the what is known as the Pluto Return, and that is why all the dirt out of the US history is coming out to light, and it is because not only humans have natal charts, but also countries have natal charts. I mean, and that's the day that, for example, it's decided, for example, the day that you sign the constitution or whatever, that depends on the birth of each country. So Pluto, for example, takes 246 years to go around to do a full cycle. So no human being will ever experience Pluto return, but countries can do that. And the US is experiencing now a Pluto return, which explains why everything is so up, it's just so chaotic. That's the transit, the period, the transit that the US is experiencing. We all experience it in smaller in our lives, but that's Pluto for you. It just digs out of the dirt. It takes, it just brings out everything. I mean, Pluto moved into the sign of Capricorn, which is the sign of structures, in 2008, when it was the financial crisis. So Pluto walks into Capricorn, the first thing that destabilizes the financial system. And Pluto will be in Capricorn until 2024, when then it will move into Aquarius. So all that we're saying about, the powers be, the governments, the structures falling apart, healthcare structures, political structures, all this, sort of like all like being destabilized. That's Pluto. And it isn't about like creating chaos for the sake of creating chaos. It's creating chaos to find a new order, to find new ways to do things.
Shedding skin in a sense, right?
Was that?
Shedding skin in a way, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. I mean, Pluto rules is the ruler of Scorpio, and the energies of a Scorpio is about death and rebirth. Is shedding skin, is about being born again, is process, cycles of life and death and everything. So there is, and actually it was really interesting. I read someone share the other day on Facebook that someone in Google said that an AI robot had developed, it was sentient, it had developed feelings.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I saw that as well.
Which I
think
thought
it was
really
a Google
interesting.
engineer, if I'm correct.
Exactly. So it was really interesting because this happened like this last weekend, at the time when Venus, which is the ruler of feelings, was conjunct Uranus, which is the ruler of technology. So here you have two planets, technology and feelings, coming together in the sky next to what is the North Node, which has to do with like destiny and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So everyone was talking about that something will come up, like that they will change things. And I'm like, oh, how interesting. Oh, how interesting.
That is very interesting, yeah.
But it's not, it's so accurate. It's uncanny. And with that, if anyone thinks, oh, does it mean that all history is written and, that we have no free will? No. This has nothing to do with like not having any free will. What you have free will and you have free choices, but you are being affected by the energies, and you can still decide how you are going to what you're going to do with that. You still have a choice, but it's really interesting how ideas and things, they just it's just incredibly accurate, and to live in without knowing that, you are not doing yourself any favor. It's like living not knowing that what fire can do.
Yeah.
To me it's like, I am not to convince anyone. I don't care. Everyone lives their lives as they want, but I get really passionate because it is so incredibly helpful.
For sure.
And I think that people, will you'll speed up a lot of things, like from knowing yourself to just using your energy in a much more efficient way, and also understanding why things are happening, because ultimately understanding astrology or the planets work is nothing but understanding how life works.
Yeah, I can get behind that part 100%. I think so. And I think actually one thing that we should probably get into a bit more as well is the natal chart thing, because we briefly touched upon that. But I think one thing that might be actually very useful, everyone can obviously Google and see when their birthday is and whatever, and find out their sun sign or whatever. I mean, to me, actually, I've already got a very weird thing of that anyway, where I freak out all of my friends because I know every single person's birthday and every single person's star signs and things like that, so it's like that in itself is like, it's still a lot to look into. But when you really open the book of looking at your natal chart, I mean, I didn't even look at my own until I think just around 3 years ago, where this lady who I know, who's a Reiki healer, I was having a very extended conversation with her, and then she started telling me about all this. I was like, I didn't know about that, and then I started looking into it, and then found out I have like 6 different things in my chart that are in Scorpio, and then I'm I'm Aries moon, so practically Satan, so I was like, it was all very, it was all very interesting to me. And then when you read it, and then it almost like gives you specific things about even your physical condition, which that was the one where I looked into that. I was like, okay, yeah, this is way too specific to be bullshit. You know what I mean? And I think at the end of the day as well, rather than obviously, like you said, it's a helpful thing to know. But I think for someone, especially someone who might be a skeptic, I think a very healthy way of approaching it is to just use it as a tool to get to know yourself and understand life better, rather
Absolutely.
than become like a thing to it. Because like you said, you still have free will and free choice, because the fact that these things affect the world around you and can have an impact on you, that's like the same as getting rained on. You know what I mean? If you go for a run and then it starts raining, it's your choice to then stop and come back home or carry on running. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's
Absolutely.
that kind of a situation when it comes to astrology and understanding the world as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Exactly. I mean, how you use, the information is up to you. That the planets want. But the energies will find a way to, take you towards, that direction. Because, the natal charts gives you a lot of information, and it's a great tool for self knowledge. For understanding yourself way better, to understand what works for you, but also, you could say, oh yeah, but I know what works for me. Yes, but the thing is, and that also shows in the natal chart, that there is part of us that are important to us, that we have a little voice that it never really shuts up towards what you feel attracted to or you feel tempted to, and then, but it feels unsafe, and many times you do not know how to read those voices. You do not know whether you should go that direction or you should not go that direction. Sometimes it is a bit, knowing what is fear, what feels familiar, what not feels familiar, what is comfortable, and all this. And like the natal chart can give you information about that. It, as you said, it can also give you information about health issues and physical things and stuff like that. And we are all unique. It's not about being special. It's understanding how unique you are. Because while there is, there is no one that has a natal chart like yours. Absolutely no one. So no one has the combination of energies in the same way as you do, or as I do, So understanding that we are so unique, but yet we all have, certain, like a common thread. We're still, made of the same kind of energies, but just combined differently,
Or just like you only have, sorry to interrupt you, but it's just like you only have one, your fingertip, so your fingerprint.
Exactly.
That's
unique. It's unique.
Yeah.
Exactly. Your natal chart is as unique as your fingertip, basically. Because even if, unless two people unless they're twins, maybe that, you could say that, but it depends how apart they're born, that also will change with the house system and stuff like that. But there is a lot to that you can get to know, and that it helps a lot. It helps, even if any area of your life that you're stuck, looking at the natal chart is like, it gives an incredible amount of information that you could spend, years going to therapy for it, if you wanted to. But, the natal chart actually tells you a lot. And of course, you can always do whatever you want with that information. Absolutely. And find your own way. It's not, you're not predetermined. You are just influenced by, which is different.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way of saying that. And I'm going to change the subject here a little bit, but to be purely due to the point that you just said now, because it reminded me of something. You said that you are not predetermined, but you are influenced by something. And obviously, let me know if you don't want me to get into this. I hope you don't mind, but you recently wrote a very beautiful eulogy for a friend of yours called Sumi Soduni, I believe was her surname, and so I don't think I ever had the chance or the opportunity to meet her in person myself, or I might have done, but you know what it's like when you're in London with lots of people and things. But a very good friend of mine who I'm working with very closely, he knew her very well and told me a little bit about her life and some of the things that she had done. And I was just wondering if you don't mind just shedding a little bit of light on her work and just her as a person and your connection to her.
Yeah, I mean, Sumi was, well, I met her in London at a gig, a night out or something, I think. I can't remember exactly. I don't know when we started talking, but I do remember like sitting down a few times and talking, because she was at the time studying photojournalism, well, journalism. You know, she wanted to get into journalism, and I remember her telling me like how much she, like, that me doing what I was doing was such an inspiration to her. You know, that I was doing, you know, photography and how I was doing it and everything, and she was very, you know, I mean, we spoke Spanish, you know, because she was Spanish, and she had a lot of fire in her. And yeah, I mean, when we first talked, I mean, she was maybe 18, and she just had a dream. And she was just starting. She had just started, basically, and yeah, and she just continued and she pursued it, and then, I mean, she did, you know, she was doing very well. I mean, like, it was, however wild she was, she kept her focus, you know, and her mind to, you know, to what she wanted to do. And she did it. I mean, she started to cover things, you know, events and stuff in Africa, and yeah, I mean, and then she ended up moving to Uganda. And it was, I mean, and she covered all sorts of stories, you know, from like women's stories to, you know, we will go cover, you know, it took pictures of the president or the candidate to the presidency, or, you know, like the rebels. I mean, she just got into all sorts of situations, but she was just, she had just this charm and this, like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, just very, very special. And, you know, she will throw herself into whatever she did. And that was very inspiring to see. I mean, however much of an inspiration I had been, she became my inspiration, you know, by doing what she was doing. She became a extremely talented photographer, even though she did not start it as a photographer as such. I mean, she started more as a journalist, but she developed, you know, like, great talent for photography, and yeah, and she was great. And again, like, I did see her last time now a year ago. It's going to be beginning of July, a year ago, at a mutual friend's wedding. And yeah, and I never thought that would be the last time I would see her. But it was nice to see her, and it was nice to that exchange, you know, we talked about earlier at the beginning. Like, we exchange words, we exchange a lot of words of, like, you know, admiration and support and love. And that was, I don't have any pictures, but but I have the memories very much so. And Yeah, and well, I mean, and she died in a car accident. I mean, a front-on collision. I mean, she had been in way more dangerous situations than that. I mean, she was,
Mm.
in a car, and not, and somehow she survived, and she didn't survive that one. So, yeah,
But I think a lot of her work speaks for itself, doesn't it? I mean, that is really powerful. At least from what I've seen. Obviously, you know her better, but from what I could see of what she was doing in London, and then to go all the way to Uganda of all places, and then get into all of these situations, and I think that's really a statement, and that's like just how brave a woman can be, that's crazy, and that's actually, I think it's a beautiful thing, you know what I mean. I mean, even though there's obviously it's a sad situation, but also really the work that she then left behind from doing that, I think is tremendous. It's
yes.
Awesome. It's so cool to see that, and it really speaks for itself, I think.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it is, as you said, it's an incredible amount of, it's an incredible amount and quality of work, and it is very much representative of who she was, and that what someone is capable of doing, and she's a living proof of that, I mean, as you said, courageous, brave, also very, with a lot of compassion, you can see in her pictures as well, so definitely.
Yeah, I think that I think that her Instagram page is still up if people still want to go and check out her work and things like that, correct? So that's
exactly,
Sumi Sadurni, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, see, the thing here for me as well, and the reason why I bring her up, I have a real soft spot for people in general who sort of dedicate themselves wholeheartedly to something that they believe in, against all odds, it could go completely like pear-shaped or whatever, but you still dedicate yourself to art. And obviously, having come from Iran, I relate to that, but I'm not comparing. I'm just saying that I understand it, and I have nothing but admiration for those kind of people like her, or even like yourself included. Absolutely, like that's, for me, it's like that's the kind of thing that I see in people that just makes me happy, makes me think like, okay, there's still some cool people out there.
Thank you. Well, but yourself too. I mean, you're someone who's also had a long journey and have worked and accomplished a lot.
The accomplishments are on their way. We've only just I think just the tip of the iceberg at the moment. I think the work that we did together will certainly contribute to that, and I can't wait to finally release that to people. So obviously, for anyone who's listened this far, you probably deserve to hear that we did work together on something upcoming with Trivex. And I remember when we were there and we were doing the shoot. Obviously, we've got the whole setup, we've got the music, the background, everything. It's a very elaborate setting, just to give like a little bit of a mind teaser for everyone to imagine. But I remember that when we were doing the shoots, I was looking into your camera thinking, many of my heroes have stared into the same camera, and I'm now looking at exactly the same point. so it was that kind of a thought process. I suppose what we mentioned earlier about like looking into one point. So Esther Segarra's camera is one of them points. Very important metal piece of underground. Yeah. But no, it turned out fantastic. I cannot wait to share those with people. I think it will be good.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
Yeah. And
yes, that was.
Yeah, it was good, and thank you so much for coming on to the podcast as well. I do really appreciate the conversation that we've just had. I might be sounding biased, but I think this was actually one of my favorites chats I've ever had on this show thus far. I feel like we could have probably gone on for like another 10 hours, maybe 11.
Yes.
But
I can say that now I want to see your natal chart. Now I can.
Oh yeah. I'll send it to you afterwards if you want. That's no problem.
Yeah. I'll be, because some things, I like to guess people, to like, oh, they might
Right.
have this energy and this energy. And
Yeah.
so
I
it's
do
nice.
that. It's interesting you mentioned that, because once I obviously natal chart, that's very complicated, but one very interesting thing that I got into is so I worked at this place where I was basically dealing with people's names and their date of births, right? So, and it got to the point, Esther, that, I mean, this was really strange and very interesting, and this is like, I don't know how to explain this to someone who is a skeptic of these things, but I got to the point, and I still have this sometimes now, but now I just go with like a general vibe when I meet people, and like a general feel. Because sometimes as well, you have people whose signs are compatible with yours, but their energy is not really like where it should be, as you said, because then that's down to their choices and things like that, right? So what I mean is, like, if I meet someone else, for example, who's like got very compatible things with me, but then I don't want to give them too much credit ahead of time. I want to get to know each person as they are. That's where I'm coming from. So, this is what I mean. That at this workplace, I got to the point where I one time, not just one time, but multiple times, I would have people walking in, and they'd never been before, but I'd look at them. Like one time, I had a couple walk through the door, and I was like, "He's a Leo, she's a Pisces. How much are we going to bet that this is the case?" And they came and they both gave me their date of birth, and I was spot on. Like, they weren't even like a cusp or anything, like the guy's birthday was like at the beginning of August, and the girl's birthday was like, I think, right at the end of February. So I'm like, I don't know what is going on here. I don't know what's happening, but there is something to that, like, obviously. So yeah, very, very interesting. So I think to your point about like people and their energies and stuff, it's a fascinating thing.
It is. It really is. I mean, yes. I mean, I think it brings kind of a spirituality, or some aspects of spirituality, into more of a tangible way.
Yeah.
When you look at things in, as you can put it, more like names, and you can see more the ongoing correlation. Not just something that is just up there, and
Mm-hmm.
But, and I think it's really cool that you've been able to tap into into that and to really know that. That's really cool.
It's really weird. Yeah, I mean, at one time I scared this girl at my workplace. I mean, we became friends afterwards and everything, but she was new. She came in, and then I was like, I'm gonna guess her birthday. And then because everyone knows, like, I know every person's birthday at my workplace, even not just them, but I even know like their kids' birthdays, and like really weird. I don't know if that's like a really on the spectrum thing. I don't know why my brain even has the capacity for these things, but it's just like somehow, somewhere, I've got all this knowledge stored about everyone's birthdays. So anyway, this girl came in, but normally someone has to tell me, or I have to see it somewhere, or it comes up on Facebook, things like that. This girl came in, and she was really nice, by the way, but like, for some reason, I think I made a bet with one of the guys who worked there, because he knew how like autistic I was with these things, and he said to me, it was like, we made a bet of like me guessing her birthday, and out of 64 days in a year, I guessed the birthday by 2 days off.
Wow.
And I don't have any fucking idea how I did that, but it was just a vibe, I think her birthday was like 16th of October, I think. And I said 18th, something like that. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't know how that works, but yeah, it is something.
Wow. That's amazing.
I know. I don't know how it works, but there is, I suppose there is something there. And I think
yeah. Sorry. No. I mean, obviously you have a capacity to just channel that, I mean, obviously, through people's birthday. I mean, that's
it's one
pretty
thing,
amazing.
It's one of them things. It's what I mentioned earlier.
Can you guess my birthday?
I think I already know.
You already know.
Yeah, because I think I wished you happy birthday last year.
Yes, you did.
I know it's next month. Is it the 20th?
21st. Yes.
21st. One day off. See?
Well done.
Right,
Yeah, but that
okay.
doesn't count because now you know it.
Yeah, well, I've remembered it since last year, so I think that's something, right? I think most people can
Yes.
remember like their mom and dad's birthdays. So
No, I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
yeah. All right, cool.
I'm
Okay.
well impressed. I'm well
Yeah,
impressed.
I'm not even sure if it's a good thing that I know this, but here we are. It's some extra knowledge, I guess. But
Yeah, no, but that's great. Yes.
yeah. I think it's like, without getting too deeper into it, I think it's got more to do with, you know, what I said to you earlier about this, like information is somehow external, and then you sort of like just tap into it with like songs from like 60s, 70s that I mentioned too, that you listen to that. I think it's like a similar kind of thing, probably, that the information is external and our brains are just an antenna or a vessel, and then we just like pick up on that, and then it's like,
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That's the case. Yeah, and I'll be curious to look at your chart. I mean, there is my favorite part of the chart to look at is what is known as the lunar nodes, that has to do with life purpose.
Yeah. I think my north node is Scorpio, actually, which is like, you know, I'm mine is crazy. I think I'm like Sun in Scorpio, Venus in Scorpio, Mercury in Scorpio, Jupiter in Scorpio, Pluto in Scorpio, and I think the north node as well. So yeah, Satan, as I mentioned earlier. I know, right?
That's quite something.
I know, yeah. And then so this is like for anyone listening, they're like, they've got full knowledge on my natal chart now.
And you said you have Aries moon, right?
Aries moon, yeah, that's right. And then Capricorn rising as well.
Okay, interesting. I have a friend who also has a Aries moon and also North Node Scorpio. Actually, that's a very actually. I'm not going to say who that is, but it's connected to you somehow.
Oh, is that so? Right. Very interesting.
So
right.
it's interesting. It's just, but also I find it interesting to know, because also you tend to attract certain people in certain,
100%.
You know, with certain energies as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the drummer in my band, so obviously my sun, moon, and rising is water, fire, and earth. And the drummer in Trivex, Matt, who you've met, he's exactly the same. They're all different signs, but actually, no, he's Aries moon as well. He's Pisces sun, Aries moon, and then Virgo rising. So it's interesting that him and I have ended up in the same band for over 10 years now. Yeah,
and it's a good thing that he has a lot of mutable energy, because two Aries moon will not work well together.
No. Well, he knows I write the songs, you know, so like, if he disagrees, I can kick his ass.
But he has a lot of like adaptable energy. So he will be the one to adjust, but you have a lot of fixed energy.
That's right. Yeah. See, that's actually spot on. I should hire you as the band therapist, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so interesting, this thing. I mean, that's, but also understanding, you know, if you tend to have difficulties by being stubborn, or you are too, you know, like too pushy. I mean, not pushy, you know, but I mean, like all these things, if you don't get together with someone who's complementary, you will end up, you know, fighting all the time.
Yeah, that is very true. You know, it's like that in any kind of relationships, obviously, not just in the context of a band, although a band is almost like more complicated.
It is
like, it's
like a family, is a family constellation.
Yeah, it's like marriage, but without sex. So you have to communicate even more than you normally would in like any other relationship.
Yes, exactly. But that's the other thing about astrology, that you can, by knowing these things, you can also know which kind of partners are more compatible with you as well.
I think that's one of the biggest parts of it, really. Yeah, this is one of them things. But also, like, I wouldn't, like, the problem with that is, I think some people will read that and then they go like, oh, maybe I should break up with my girlfriend because it's not compatible or whatever. It's like, no, that's not always what it means, but it just means that if you're not compatible, you might have to work more on certain things to gain each other's trust.
Exactly. Yeah. You might understand why you are not compatible, you know, because, like, I mean, you might just find like, oh, okay, so, you know, like I need to be like very, like I need this, like someone might need, like certain securities, for example, or might need like, oh, I just need to move, like I need to move all the time. And, and understanding what you need and what your partners need, you can actually find a way to be compatible. Totally.
Yeah.
And to recognize what you can do together and what you can not do together, for example,
Absolutely. And
so
I think on that note, as far as the episode is concerned, I think we fucking smashed this one. I think, like I said, once again, thank you so much for jumping on, Esther. I appreciate your time and your knowledge and just your presence on here. I think it's made for a fantastic conversation. Do you have anything that you'd like to share with people that you want them to check out that yourself are doing at the moment, or anything to look out for?
No, I mean, of course, welcome to check my website, esthersegarra.com. And also, if anyone is interested in working with astrology, there is also Cosmoplanner, cosmo-planner.com website that you can check out. And if not, I mean, just follow the moon cycles, whether you are a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. If you want to tap into your creative side, it's highly recommended. And also to understand, if you find yourself fluctuating emotionally, if you find yourself not understanding, why you go up and down, and things like that, definitely recommended that you keep track of the moon cycle. It's really helpful, and it will help you a lot. Hopefully, that's my aim. That it helps people. So that's why I'm talking about these things. It has helped me, so hopefully it will help others.
Fantastic. Well, it certainly helped myself, as I mentioned earlier on. So yeah, I highly recommend and urge people to check that out. And do you still have any copies of Ars Umbra available at the moment as well? Or
not on me, but if you go to my website, there is a page on Ars Umbra, and you can order copies from Season of Mist. They still have copies. If you want signed copies, then go to Dial Patterson's website called Never Dies. Yep. He has copies of the book signed. I don't have any with me, but they're still available. Yes.
Fantastic. All right, Esther. Well, I appreciate you very much for jumping on. Thank you also to everyone who's listened to the podcast so far. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I think we gave you a really good episode here. So if you've stuck around all the way to the end, thank you so much. And I hope to see you guys on the next episode of Iblis Manifestations. Take care, people.